Thank you so much for being here, everyone. We're going to get started in just a moment. Okay, we're going to get started. So good morning and afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you so much. We're excited to have this very important conversation. My name is Imani Rupert-Gordon. I'm the president of the National Center for Lesbian Rights, and I'm joined today by NCLR's legal director, the brilliant Shannon Minter. Just to set the agenda for you, for the first 30 minutes, Shannon and I will have a discussion about the election and how NCLR is thinking through what this means and what we're going to do. There's a lot of unknowns in this moment, but there are some things that we do know, and we want to share some of that with you today. Our plan is to save a couple of minutes at the end, if we can, to take some questions from the Q&A. Then in about 30 minutes, we're going to invite you to stay on to join Shannon and Nessa Johnson from NCLR, along with some of our partners at GLAD Law, the Movement Advancement Project, and Family Equality to talk about what this election means specifically in developing strategies to help LGBTQ people protect our marriages and our families. Now, to get started, I know that we're hearing a lot that we've been here before, and so we know what to do. But that's not what we're going to say today, because I don't think that's exactly right. I don't think we have been here before. The history of civil rights has been creating a foundation to achieve rights for more of us, and then building on that to continue to include even more of us, and expanding rights as we grow our work. We have not been in a position where we've expected our rights to be taken away. And that's what we need to prepare for right now. This is terrifying, and it's lonely, and it's an unfamiliar place in many ways. And while we might feel alone, we are absolutely not. I'm proud of not only our movement, but of our coalition of movements jumping in and working together. I convene and host a monthly call with national leaders of LGBTQ organizations across the country because I know that our success is dependent on each other. I'm also part of a small intersectional team, and in December, we are hosting a retreat that a few of us have planned over the last several months in order to convene leaders of LGBTQ organizations, reproductive justice organizations, civil rights organizations, and funders, bringing together more than 75 of us to strategize about how we can meet this moment together. We're entering a difficult chapter, absolutely, but you have a strong team that's building together. And I know that because I'm one of the leaders that's prioritized these collaborations and these working relationships. And so as a movement, we're stronger, but I want you to know that NCLR is stronger as well. And we do know what to do right now. We're a legal organization, and I sincerely believe that there are things that we are going to be able to stop in the courts. In a little bit, Shannon's going to talk about Scrimeti, but this is an important case, and it's going to help determine our strategy and how we're able to move forward. And we know what we can't stop, we can certainly slow down. And we're going to make it as hard as possible, and we're going to do everything that we can to undo anyone that's trying to undo any of our protections. We're going to make that as hard and as difficult as possible. This is not going to be easy for anyone. And we're going to challenge absolutely everything we can at every single level. And we're going to do everything we can to change public opinion and to expose how sinister and harmful these attempts are, and that they are for everyone, not just LGBTQ people. We know that a lot of this work is going to fall to states. And so we're going to be working as closely as possible with states to do as much as we can. For instance, for those of us in California, we know that Governor Newsom has been convening a special session that's going to start in December so that we will be able to swiftly respond to protect people in California from attacks. This is an amazing example of what states can do. And so these are some of the things that we're thinking about. The last thing I want to mention before Shannon starts is how we are coming into this work moving forward. I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen too, a lot of analysis about who is at fault and why we're in the place that we're in. They're finding ways to pit our communities against each other, and we can't have that happen. I've seen people that I care about and respect blame our communities for pushing for what we should be considering and what is and how everyone should be respected. And I know that when we get scared, there is an urge to strategize from a place of scarcity and to leave folks behind. And I want to remind us that that's not who we are or who we've ever been. But I also want to say that this election did teach us something about people. And that is something that we've known at NCLR for a long time. But we've seen firsthand about what it means when we're talking about issues like an us versus them frame. That doesn't serve anyone. NCLR has done this work for years, working behind the scenes and having strategies that bring people together, not tear us apart. And so I'm going to turn to Shannon right now, who's going to tell you some of the projects that we're working on at NCLR that's going to help us achieve this goal. Shannon, please.
Thanks, Imani. Yeah, I just want to reiterate something Imani just said, which is that we've not ever been in a situation like this one before. And I remember back in 2016, we did say, we've been here before, we know how to fight these battles. But honestly, at this point, we have got to acknowledge, folks, that we're living through something genuinely new. I mean, the ground is shifting under our feet, and there is obviously, both nationally and internationally, a political realignment that is happening that has potentially very dire consequences for us and many other vulnerable communities. I mean, there are certainly lessons from the past we can draw on for sure, but it's also critical. We have got to think and act in new ways. And the number one thing I'm here to tell you all is that we're ready to do that in CLR. We are more than ready to do that. Think the greatest single danger for our movement right now and for related movements too, I think, is that we just give in to this completely false belief, but it is very tempting and easy to get into that headspace that there's just no path forward, that we're helpless, there's nothing we can do in the face of this way. It just feels like this overwhelming just wave of reactionary proposals and officials and new president and all that washing over all of us. But that is absolutely not the case. We have a lot of tools at our disposal, and believe me, we intend to use every single one of them. And first and foremost is litigation. I mean, it's more critical than ever I can remember in my 30 years of doing this, that we have to be prepared as a movement to challenge as many anti-LGBT, anti-feminist, anti-Black, anti-working class, anti-immigrant, anti-democracy policies that we know are going to be put forward by this administration. And we are gearing up to do that. And look, there's still a lot of good judges in this country. President Biden is putting more on the court every day. There's many good venues for challenging these harmful policies. We will be doing that. We can stop some, we can delay some, we can mitigate the harm. And here I'm going to quote my very good friend and colleague from Glad Law, Jennifer Levi: stop, delay, reduce harm. That is our motto on the litigation front. It's a very powerful tool. And look, I don't want to give away like all of our specific litigation strategies, but we are preparing to file new lawsuits in response to policies we know are going to be introduced right away when the administration gets into office. So that's first and foremost. Second thing is we can take advantage of the fact that the bad guys, the right wing, has made our community a visible public target. We can use that public visibility to educate people about the reality of our lives. That's something NCLR, we're making this a huge, huge priority in this moment. It's something I'm excited to tell you actually that we've been partnering with Glad Law and some other groups in the nation's biggest communications firm to launch an extremely aggressive public education campaign about families with transgender children. We've been putting this together for months. It's one of the most hopeful and exciting projects I've ever been part of in my 30 years. I'm really excited about it. And one precursor to that, which some of you may have seen, I hope you have, is the short video that we put together with this same communications firm called Healthcare is Caring. is about parents of transgender children. If you haven't watched it and share it, please do. We're also deeply involved in new messaging, coming up with new messaging about women and transgender people in sports and collaborating with new partners around that. And some of you are probably aware we're very actively litigating that issue in cases across the country, and we will continue to do that. Possibly that's an issue that may be in the Supreme Court soon. So the stakes of these battles are super high. I mean, the right wing is using transgender people and just the public's lack of familiarity with transgender people and how easy it is to demonize transgender people, really as a Trojan horse to undermine legal protections against sex discrimination and sexual orientation discrimination more broadly. And I just want to tell you, on our watch, that is not going to happen without a struggle. We are going to expose that and fight that. So we've got litigation, public education, and we are doubling down, tripling down on our efforts to build bridges, both with moderate conservatives who do support basic equality for our community, and at the same time, other socially and economically marginalized groups with whom we, share so much common ground. And I'll just give you a few examples. So we're working with conservative colleges and universities to help them provide more support for LGBT students. That's a project called Common Ground. We partner with NCAA in that work. We've been doing it for several years, certainly more important than ever now. Another is our partnership with legal aid organizations across the country to help them represent LGBTQ people who cannot afford private attorneys. We're the only legal organization, LGBT legal organization, that does that work in that systematic way, and I'm very proud of us for doing that. It's certainly very important right now. Another is our Rural Pride program. Another is our work with advocates in the child welfare system that are addressing the profound racism, sexism, classism, homophobia, transphobia that causes so many parents to have their children wrongfully ripped away from them. And again, I think we're the only LGBT legal organization that does that work in a very systematic way, and I'm very proud of us for doing that. And I'll tell you, this stuff is all very, very, very important right now, because in the past election, one thing we learned the hardest way possible is that many people in marginalized communities did not feel seen or heard and did not vote. So we understand that. And one common theme across all our work is building on common ground, solidarity, addressing the real life issues that affect people's everyday lives, and talking in ways that ordinary people can relate to and understand. And Imani, I know you have some thoughts on that messaging work, so I'm going to kick it back to you on that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I really appreciate it. So a big part of what we're doing are finding effective ways to talk about who we are. So much that what we're hearing is like just what Shannon said, is that people voted against equality. Not only is this frame not an accurate one, but it creates a division that's unnecessary, and it's certainly unhelpful. We know that across political parties, the vast majority of people, 8 out of 10 people, support protections for LGBTQ people. We know that the majority of people support a path to citizenship over mass deportations. We know that most people support reproductive freedom and bodily autonomy. We're not far away from each other. Our work is to find ways to make it possible for people across ideologies to support basic freedoms that they believe in anyway. We know with certainty that our work right now is not to fight an opponent, and so we're not going to be using that language. Our job in this moment is to highlight the ways that we are similar to our leaders and to our neighbors, so that everyone knows that all of us are deserving of human dignity. That healthcare and in participation in public life, that is something that has to be afforded to everyone. And when it isn't, it compromises freedom for everyone. So we need to make this easy and clear that LGBTQ people must be included and protected in the ways that we protect all people and all families. We need to make it easy and clear for folks. So remember that lives are on the line right now, and how we talk about these issues have very real ramifications, and our analysis of inclusion have enormous implications for people. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been asked a lot about how we are going to get through the next 4 years with an administration that in many ways actively campaigned against our community. And I'm going to say what I said then, and I'm not trying to get through the next 4 years. What I think we need to be doing is change the tide. When we talk about marriage equality, we talk about it as one of the most influential decisions of our lifetime. And in many circles, we've heard about the sophisticated leadership or legal strategy that went into that. And that it didn't start with marriage, that it started with domestic partnerships and with statewide domestic partnership registration. And all of these were building blocks that made the decision in 2015 appear easy. But when you talk to the same people about what were the strategies that actually worked, they wouldn't say it was about equal treatment or due process. They would say it is the LGBTQ people just loved each other and wanted to get married. And that's what got through to people, that people just love each other. Before that, the vast majority of people didn't believe in marriage equality. And then the vast majority of people did. We have to keep this simple and let people be people. There are types of arguments that we're going to need to make in order to protect the rights that we already have and find ways to protect our communities in the future. And that kind of change is the kind of change that we get by living our lives thoroughly and authentically. It's not about fighting an opponent, it's about bringing us all together. And that's how we're going to change the tide. Now, that's not to say that things aren't difficult and we shouldn't be concerned about things. But two, it's important for us to remember that even in the most difficult times, that we do have tools supporting us as we are changing the tide. And I know for one thing, healthcare is absolutely something on our minds and it should be. There are natural links between the work that we've done making birth control possible, abortion care, and trans healthcare in this moment that will hopefully provide connections to strategies to help trans people receive the absolutely necessary and often life-saving healthcare. In addition, we have to provide an opportunity. This will provide an opportunity for us to make our movement stronger, and it also lets us learn from each other. We can't underestimate the value of collaboration in this moment, and ultimately a social justice movement that includes all of us. And we're not talking about these as separate movements. That is the goal here, that this is not a movement and more just like how we look at humanity. Secondly, I know that something that's on people's mind, and I've seen that some questions that are coming up for folks is what we're thinking about marriage equality. And this has been on our mind since Justice Thomas wrote his concurring opinion in the Dobbs decision that the court should reconsider this. Now, the panel after this one is going to talk about this in a lot greater detail. But I want to remind folks in this moment that the Respect for Marriage Act provided an important protection for us. That as long as marriage equality exists in any state, that marriage has to be recognized everywhere. And so making protections at the state level in as many states as possible is going to be more important than ever as we continue to shore up protections at every single level. So those are some things that I just wanted to mention. I'm going to turn it back over to Shannon, who's going to talk some more about what we can do in this moment at the state level, and then we'll introduce you to the second panel.
Yeah, I
So
do.
back to you.
Oh, sorry, Imani. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I do just want to say, any question you have about anything to do with marriage, stay on and get ready because we have Mary Bonato, who is the architect of the Respect for Marriage Act, the architect of marriage equality movement, a leading expert in the world on marriage equality, and Mary has very kindly agreed to um, be on this next panel and answer any questions about that. So definitely stay on for that. Yeah, the last big thing in terms of tools and tactics and strategies and all that, in addition to the ones I already mentioned, which was the litigation, public education, and then building bridges with with moderate conservatives and with other marginalized groups, is like, what can we do in this moment in the blue states to create protections that will help people in other places and that will also just maintain some, hopefully large parts of our country where there is genuine equality for LGBT people. And we are looking to some degree here in pursuing that strategy at some of the ideas that the reproductive rights and justice movements have come up with. And I'm sure y'all have heard of some of this, the so-called shield laws. I think there's probably a lot of misunderstanding about those laws, but about what they actually do. But we and others, our partners at other organizations, are looking carefully at what the reproductive rights movement has accomplished with that. And some blue states have already passed shield laws that do encompass transgender health care. And we're going to make sure that every single blue state that has a blue legislature enacts a law that provides the maximum protection to people who are living in red states where their care is banned, that they can travel to a blue state and get the care that they need. So that's one thing we're looking at real carefully. Also, kind of on a more alarming end of the spectrum, it is possible, you all, that incoming president may issue an executive order that bans any state from using its Medicaid program to provide any transgender health care, maybe just to minors, maybe even to adults. So another thing that we're looking at real seriously is, are there ways to create new healthcare resources in blue states that exist independently of these federally funded programs? And that could end up being a serious lifeline for a lot of folks. And then there's a lot of really creative legislation, some of it that we came up with back in the early days before there were federal protections against healthcare discrimination for transgender people. I'm not going to go into detail about that here. I want to a little bit, keep our strategies strategic and not just announce them broadly. But there's some creative types of legislation to ensure that almost no matter what happens at the federal level, that there will be states in this country where transgender minors and transgender adults will continue to be able to receive medically necessary, in many cases, life-saving health care. So that's also a really, I think, fruitful and important tool that we'll be looking at in the future. I think we're kind of close to wrapping up here. Is that right, Imani?
It looks like we are. We have time. If you want to drop some questions in the Q&A, we're absolutely happy to take those now. We're gonna wrap up in just a couple of minutes. But I did want to say to this group too, I think a lot of times, we want to know what organizations are doing, but a question we get all the time is, what can I do in this moment too? You have access to your communities, and we would ask during this time, we want to change the way that we are doing this work. Find ways to explain the work that we're doing, how to talk about who you are, who your family is. The idea here is not to push people away, and I think that we've gotten to a place in many different parts that what we're doing is we're fighting to say, this is what should happen. But the thing is, we are in a very tough spot right now, and lives are on the line. What is most important is that people understand who we are. And I understand that that is work. This is my job. So if anyone wants to talk to me about absolutely anything that has to do with anyone, I know there is emotional labor that's tied up in that. But the truth is, it also saves lives. And so I would encourage you, and I would encourage the folks that you're close to think about what it looks like to not fight with folks that think differently than us, but find ways to connect, because this is actually going to be the things that saves lives with our community. And so in this moment, let's really try to do that. I see there's some things
Yeah, I want to
here.
jump on these
Go ahead.
questions really quick. There's a question about people who fear for their families, security. What are the things LGBT families should be doing right now to protect their families? And then particularly fearing for trans friends and families in Tennessee. Are there resources if they're strapped financially? Stay tuned for the next panel about detailed information about what people can do to protect their families. But on that question about, are there things that trans people in Tennessee, if they're strapped financially, can do? Campaign for Southern Equality actually is providing financial support for people who need it to travel or even move to another state to get health care for their kids. So that's a wonderful program, Campaign for Southern Equality. And then Derek, you're asking, can we clarify more on how some states will still be able to provide transgender health care even if there's federal level legislation? Now, I'm talking about two different things. If there's federal executive order or legislation saying that no federal money can be used to provide that care, which would be devastating. It'd be devastating. It would affect Medicaid, Medicare, many Affordable Care Act programs, but states could still use their own money to provide medical care separately with no contact with federal funding. Now, if the federal government were to literally just pass a law saying that no medical provider in the whole country can provide transgender health care to anyone, that would be a different situation. Then we would have to find some way to challenge that law. I mean, there's nothing off the top of my head that I know that states could just immediately get around a law like that. But believe you me, that would be something that NCLR and the other legal groups would attack with absolute ferocity in the courts. And hopefully we could get that. I'm pretty confident there would be a court that would enjoin that somewhere in the country. And that's just something we would have to fight out in court. And that, I mean, that would be a horrific development. But you're not wrong to ask about it because sadly, we're in a world where that is not an impossibility.
Yeah. And just before we close, I see that there's some questions. I know they're going to go over this as well, but I want to remind folks to that this is not the first time that something like this has come up. To make sure that you are in communication with your doctors about when you're thinking about healthcare, because they are strategizing as well. Think about this. Think about, and again, more information about this in just a moment. Think about all the ways that you use ID, the things that you are going to be, the things that you'll need, and start getting those in place now. They're going to talk more about this in just a moment, but I just wanted to plug that. Now we're going to stop this discussion now. I want to thank Shannon. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. This will be available on a recording that you'll be able to see, as will the next panel as well. Thanks for your questions today and for joining us and for trusting NCLR. We can do this work because you believe in us. And so if you learned something today, you were inspired today, I want to encourage you to make a gift to our work. We are 100% funded by people just like you that not only believe in our work, but the way that we do our work. And so remember, you can find out more at our website, nclrights.org. Now, if you could just hang on tight, we are inviting our panelists on that are hopping on right now, and we're going to be back in just a few minutes to get started. Thanks, everyone.
Hey everyone, we got 2 more minutes and we'll get started with this panel that hopefully will be able to answer more specific questions about how you can protect your family.